The morning of September 12th, 2001. Ground Zero is still burning. The air is thick with smoke and dust, and something heavier than both of those things. And in the middle of all of it, digging through the wreckage with a shovel, is a man nobody expected to see there. No press pass, no camera crew, no announcement. Just a man in firefighter gear showing up to work. What nobody realized yet was who he used to be. To understand what happened at Engine Company 55 in the days after September 11th, you have to understand what that firehouse meant before that morning. Wooster Street, Lower Manhattan, a place where firefighters eat together, sleep in shifts, and learn to read smoke the way other people read faces. From 1980 to 1984, a young man worked out of that house. He wasn't famous. He wasn't anyone's headline. He was a firefighter. Just another member of the crew, riding the truck, responding to calls, learning the job the same way everyone else did. Slowly, physically, with people depending on him. Then he left the department and went on to build a completely different life. For the next 17 years, the firehouse existed in his past, until the morning the towers fell. And something in him that had never quite stopped being a firefighter woke up again. By the afternoon of September 11th, he was already moving. Not toward the cameras, not toward the press briefings, not toward the places the world had gathered to watch and mourn. He went to the firehouse. He knew the layout, he knew the culture, and he knew something every firefighter understands. You don't ask permission in a firehouse. You show up, and you make yourself useful. So he did. The next morning, he was at Ground Zero. What he walked into was unlike anything he had ever seen. The towers were gone. 16 acres of Lower Manhattan had become a mountain of twisted steel and burning debris. Smoke still poured from the wreckage. Fires buried deep inside the pile were still burning. And the air itself tasted that something that shouldn't be breathed. But the crews were there, hundreds of them, working rotating shifts, 12 hours on, a few hours of sleep, then back to the pile. They worked in bucket brigades, lines of firefighters passing debris hand to hand, slowly, carefully. Because somewhere under all that weight, there might still be someone alive. And he worked right beside them, gloves on, head down, doing the same work as the man next to him, which was exactly how he wanted it. Because he wasn't there to be recognized. He was there because the crews digging that pile needed another pair of hands. And he had one. For the first several days, no one thought much about him. There were firefighters from all over the region at that site. Volunteers, off-duty crews, people who had driven in from across the state. In full gear, covered in ash, with your face half hidden behind a helmet, you were just another firefighter. And that was the point. But sometime in late September, a few people started to notice something. It began the way recognition often does, quietly, almost accidentally. One firefighter looked up from the debris pile and studied the man working across from him. There was something familiar about him, something he couldn't place. The posture, the face, the voice. He had seen this man somewhere before, just not here. Not digging through rubble at Ground Zero. The firefighter mentioned it to someone else. That man looked over and paused. Neither of them said anything to him directly. You don't interrupt someone doing this kind of work to ask if you've seen them in a movie. It would have felt wrong. So they kept working, and so did he. But the question had begun moving quietly through the crew. Who is that guy? He says he used to work out of Engine 55. Yeah, but that was 20 years ago. Does he look familiar to you? No one asked him directly, because at that moment, it almost didn't matter. Whoever he had been before this, right now he was simply another firefighter, and the work was enough. The story eventually reached reporters, not because he told it, but because firefighters did. A journalist was asking about the volunteers working the pile, and someone mentioned him. The man digging through rubble beside them, working 12-hour shifts, showing up day after day without speaking to the press, was Steve Buscemi. The actor, the face from Reservoir Dogs, from Fargo, from The Big Lebowski. One of the most recognizable character actors in Hollywood. And 20 years earlier, a firefighter at Engine Company 55. Lieutenant Thomas Sirico later described it simply. He just showed up in full gear, cleared rubble for days, didn't want anyone knowing it was him. Another firefighter said it even more plainly. Buscemi was digging through the pile with us. Real firefighter work. What Steve Buscemi did in those weeks wasn't a gesture. It wasn't a press event. It wasn't a publicity moment. It was labor. Real labor. Exhausting. Dangerous. Necessary. He breathed the same air, carried the same debris, worked the same shifts. He could have written a check. He could have made a speech. He could have appeared at a benefit. But instead, he put on gloves and went back to the first job he ever loved. The firefighters beside him didn't need a celebrity. They needed another pair of hands. And without announcement, without cameras, without credit, that is exactly what he gave them. There's a quiet kind of courage in returning to something you've left behind. Not because anyone expects you to, not because it changes how the world sees you, but because somewhere inside, the person you used to be is still there. Still capable, still loyal, still willing to show up. On the afternoon the towers fell, Steve Buscemi wasn't an actor going to ground zero. He was a firefighter going home. If stories like this remind you that kindness still exists in the world, consider subscribing to the channel. Each week we uncover another true story of quiet integrity, unexpected courage, and the kind of kindness most people never hear about. And if you'd like to continue the journey, you can explore the full Behind Unlikely Kindness playlist right here. This has been Behind Unlikely Kindness. And remember, integrity is what we do when no one is watching, especially when kindness is unlikely and completely unexpected.